Bonjour everyone, in previous video I showed you how to turn your torso pattern into a strapless top pattern. Just like you see here, this is my full pattern. I did add a facing as well. And today I'm showing you how I put it all together. I am cutting out my lining pieces here. I'm marking my notches. I did not cut separate pattern piece for my lining, so I'm cutting my lining pieces from my main pattern piece. And remember, I did my facing. So from the facing line, I did put a piece of paper underneath it, and I am using my tracing wheel to create a perforated mark that I will be cutting my lining from. And of course I made sure to add some allowance to that, but I do recommend you just use an actual piece of pattern paper for your lining. Cut out your lining from a piece of paper. I'm adding 1 inch hem to my lining here. My other piece, my main piece, is going to be longer than that. So this is my center front here. As you see here, I'm cutting right into my seam allowance, and it took me a moment to realize what I was doing. It was just like shocking for me to actually do that. This is the second time this happened to me, and I feel like that should be a lesson to stop using shortcut, but I have not learned my lesson yet, clearly. But I did fix this eventually. You'll see how that ended up getting fixed. But this is my center front, and I did have the tracing wheel mark on there, so I did not even have to have the paper piece. I could have used the tracing wheel mark and just cut with my seam allowance from there. This is my facing. I am marking my notches on there, and I think it would be best to mark my notches on top and bottom because I'll be connecting my other piece to my lining piece. So yeah, but anyways, I'm going to fix this piece. I am using fusible interfacing to do so. So I cut out some pieces of fusible interfacing and I placed them on there on the wrong side. And then I used my iron and just ironed it on to fuse it into my fabric here. So that's how I fixed that problem, and I think I could have done better, but it worked. It's good enough in my opinion. It probably would be helpful for me to do zigzag stitches over it as well on top of the fusible interfacing, but I decided not to do that because I will be doing understitching, so I feel like that will strengthen it enough. So I went ahead and cut out my main pieces on my main fabric. And I will be showing you what I do for my center back because I did not show you the center back pieces yet for my lining or the main piece. So for my main piece, I added 2.5 inches on there because I want my hem to be folded into 1 inch, and then the 1/2 inch will be attaching to my lining. So I'm marking 1 inch here from the center back because I want my back to have the multi-size effect. That's why I'm adding the 1 inch so that when I add my elastic, it's away from that one. It's away from the center of my back. So I'm just measuring here because I was thinking about doing a 1:2 ratio for my elastic or ruching effect. But if I did so, it would have looked very unnatural, and my line would have ended up being too long if I added if I doubled the measurement. So I ended up just adding 1 inch to it, and that's just gonna be enough for me to add my elastic to it and still have some effect going on there. So eventually that means that my tab can open up to 1 inch extra. So if I gain weight, I can still wear this. The most accurate way to have done this would have been to actually cut out that piece that I want to stretch and double the measurement of it to cut my fabric out to have that 1:2 ratio, and then I would cut my elastic the width of the main pattern piece. That would have been the best way to go about this, but I decided I didn't want to do all that work because then I would have to attach it back to it. But I did end up cutting out another layer for my lining as well because my lining is going to be the same fabric that I use for my main fabric. So I'm just cutting out the 1 inch hem for my lining, and then the piece underneath, I'll end up using that for my main piece for my top. Once I was done adding the 1 inch for my hem for the lining, I then cut it out, and then I had all my pattern pieces and I'm ready to start sewing it all together. I started by taking my facing, opening it up. It does have my notches on there, and then I laid my pieces to it the order in which they will be sewn in, just like so. And this is what it looks like after I'm done sewing the lining pieces. Now I'm ready to attach it to the facing. And like I said, my facing does have notches on there, so the notches match where my seams meet. So I just attach it that way, except for the center, it does have a notch as well. so that's different. But my facing, I add on to the lining, I sewed it on. This is what it looks like, and this is what that piece, that section looked like that I messed up on, and I will then start to understitch it. So for the back of it, I did clip my curves, just clip them, not cut into them, not cut them out, but just clip them just like so. I did so where I had the curves, and it just makes it look more smooth on the right side when you open it up. So that's why I did so. Of course, when you have curves, you're just going to end up having to do that. Even with the lining, as you see by my bust area, I did the same thing as well. I pressed everything open. So now after doing my understitching, I added my lining piece for the center back. And this is what my lining looks like completed. Now it's time to put the main pieces together, and I will be doing the same thing I did for the front, lay out my pieces and then sew them all together, just like I did for the lining. And it looks like this after I'm done sewing all the pieces together. For the seam, I did clip my curves at the bust area. I did clip in so that I can open it and have it all lay flat. And now it's time to put the lining and the main piece together. So I'm going to start sewing. I'm putting together with pins the top, and then I'll be doing the hem as well. Pin it all together, pin the self to the lining, just like so. And I did so for the hem as well, but I left an opening at the hem, which I'll be using for when I'm putting my zipper in and when I'm putting the elastic part in as well. So now I'm going to sew it all together, leaving that opening. After sewing it all together, that's what it's looking like. The top is all sewn together, and this is what everything looks like. So for my top, I did end up clipping my curves as well, just like I did when I did the facing. And then I will be doing understitching for my top as well. And of course, clipping my curves just helps when it's open for everything to be smooth, nothing pulling, no struggling happening. And then I went ahead and did the understitching on the lining part, of course, because it's understitching. For this video, I did have to skip a lot of parts because I could not upload a lot of my clips that I had, a lot of my videos, which was such a bummer, but life happens. This is after I did the understitching. Now it's time to put on my zipper. For adding my zipper, actually, I did not lose these clips, but I did not post a lot of the clips of me doing my zipper because I messed up at first. I did it wrong. I did hand sew my zipper, but I did it wrong the first time, and then I had to undo one side of it and then redo it again. And I just felt like it would be too confusing for me to actually share that with people because it would just cause confusion. So I chose not to share my zipper and how I added it. I have small clips that I added, but you won't be seeing my whole process of adding my zipper. But it worked out. Eventually, I did have to undo it and then redo it, so that worked out fine. There were still mistakes, but I will have a different clip where I show you how I fix whatever does not look perfect. So stick till the end. And it's been a struggle uploading this because it's just so much going on. Timing, schedule, losing clips, losing video clips, and just my audio not working. It's just so much. I almost gave up on this, but I determined that I said I was gonna post a tutorial completely, and I already posted the first part, so I needed to finish editing and do this part. So this is why I just pushed through and just did this, but I don't know if it will be helpful for anybody. If anything, I think the pattern maybe, but with my steps here, I don't know how useful that will be because I'm not showing every single detail, especially with the zipper. I wish I did more. My intention was to actually show you how to do a hand-sewn zipper, but unfortunately I messed up too much with the application of it that it just wouldn't make sense for me to actually share those clips with you. It would take too long for the video and just too much. So this is where I now have to re-add my zipper or do the part that I had to undo so that I could make sure I do everything right. So yeah, this is what I'm doing here, and I did have a small clip of me showing you how to handle this. Well, it's not really a tutorial, but just so you see me handling a zipper. And I do still keep my hand position in the same way that I hand sew. It's just a lot more maneuvering and making sure everything is straight as I sew and nothing is folding underneath my finger, and I just sew into the groove of the zipper. And I did iron it before I start sewing it. But yeah, this was the process of me adding the zipper. Honestly, the first time I added, when I first added the zipper, I did base stitch the edges of the zipper to the edge of my fabric, and then I did the main stitching, the back stitch that I'm doing here. But I don't always do that. I mostly do it the way I'm doing it here. I don't always do the base stitching, but I feel like base stitching helps you to keep everything in place. So for most of my pattern making videos, a lot of the samples, I actually hand sewn all the zipper, most of the zipper, 90% of the zippers I hand sewn on there. I do like hand sewing my zippers because it allows you to have more control. But for this video, for some reason, things did not work out perfectly well. So it was just a trying video for me, honestly. Everything that could go wrong actually went wrong. And yeah, so after I added my zipper, I finished that seam for the main piece. And then it was time to finish the seam for the lining as well. But then I cut my zipper first, cut the end of my zipper because it is a long zipper and I don't need all the parts of it. It will be too long for my top. It will be weird. So I cut it off, the parts that I don't need, and then I'm just anchoring it here with some stitches. And I don't know that that's necessary because my lining helps to stop it from going too far. But it would just make no sense for me to not do that because that's just habit to when you cut a zipper to actually anchor it. So here I am finishing my seam for my lining here that is attached to my zipper. I first pinned everything and then I went ahead and sewed on it. This is what it looks like pinned, and I finished it. So now I am turning my garment inside out, outside in. Yeah. Because I'm done with my zipper application. So next it's time for me to actually start putting the elastic on. And before I do so, I do have to start the steps to prepare for adding on the elastic. But this is my zipper put on and it looks like it's fine, but you'll have to wait for my picture at the end to see what it really looks like after I put the elastic on. Overall, I was satisfied with the zipper because not one part was longer than the other. I wanted everything to match and it worked out fine. Now I'm just preparing my fabric for the elastic, or my garment for the elastic application step. So I am marking 1 inch away from my center back from my zipper, and I'm doing so 2 inches, up to 2 inches after my waist. So that's how long my 1 inch line went down to. So this is my pattern piece here, and it matches what I have with the 1 inch at the center back. And next I am going to add my placement for the elastic. So my elastic is about 1/2 inch. So I'm just marking to see my casing, how much it should be. That's what I'm marking here. And then I went with my measuring tape and measured that so that I can mark with my tape measure instead. So here I'm just measuring my elastic pieces and how long it's going to be with the seam allowance as well. So it's going to be a 1/4 seam allowance on each side of my elastic. I'm just marking my waist here. My elastic will go down 2 to 3 inches past my waist. So here I'm just marking my casing measurement on the other side as well. And then I just use my chalk to draw lines on there. So you can imagine it was a lot of elastic pieces to put through, but yeah, I actually cut the pieces different sizes because they weren't all the same sizes from the top to the waist. So I did have to cut it all along the length of my pattern piece. I put the pins in before I start sewing, and this is what it looks like after I'm done sewing on the lines. And that's what the inside looks like once I'm done sewing the lines for creating my casing. So here I'm starting my elastic application or insertion. So remember the hole that I left open on my hem, I am using that to go all the way to the other side from one side to the other side. It's easier to do it from one side because it's closer, but it's not that hard to just go to the other side. It's just a trip. So that's what I did. I just moved all the way to the other side to start because it was the more complicated part. So I wanted to do that first. So I take my elastic that has my pin in there and my safety pin, and then I start from the zipper side. I bring it all the way to the top because that's where I'm starting to put my elastic. Then of course after getting to the top, I go to the first row and move it through the first row that I'm starting with and just get it all the way out. It can get a bit tricky once you get to the seam that's there, but from the zipper side it's pretty simple. Once my elastic is at a 1/4 inch past my line that I sewed on, I put my pin in and then I continue with my elastic. And then I try to fill my elastic for it to be about a 1/4 of an inch as well. That's how much seam allowance I left for my elastic to sew on. And once it gets to that part, then I kind of double check. Of course, I did more than the 1/4 inch. I think I ended up doing 3/8 of an inch. And that's what I just checked here to make sure it's not too much because with the seam allowance, it can be tricky to feel it on that side. So then I put my pin in to secure my elastic in, and then I remove my safety pin from the elastic that I use to feed it through the casing. So this is the seam allowance that I have left on the elastic here. It's more than a 1/4 of an inch, but that's fine. It's still gonna give me some adjustment. My tab is gonna fit anyways. But anyways, I did that for all of my rows, and I did move my pins as well because I'm gonna sew over the pins, and this was the position that would make it easy for me to sew over the pins. So this is what everything looks like after I added all my elastics through all of my casing. I believe it was like 28 casings total on both with both sides together, 28 casings. So it was quite a bit of work, but it wasn't that difficult. It's just, I guess, tedious, you can say, but it's just what I wanted to do. Honestly, it would have been more work if I actually did a separate piece and then connected to the garment. That would have been the best thing to do because it creates less default, less issue for your garment, but that's not what I did. I just did everything in one. My line did not turn out as straight as I wanted it to be. This was one project where it felt like, do I really know how to sew? Should I just like let it be, let it go? It was just, that was very, this project was very interesting. I ended up doing double lines, double stitches, because I just felt like that would give a better effect. It would hide how wonky my lines looked. Just so weird, just very strange. I love having straight lines when I'm sewing, but this was a project that was very trying, very testing for me, as if I've never sewn before. So it was very strange. But this is what everything looks like after I'm done with my detail at the back. Now it's time to close that opening that I left. I almost said hole, but it is a hole, but it's more of an opening. That's a proper term. So for my opening here, I'm going to try to sew as much of it on my sewing machine as possible, and then just do the rest by hand by using a ladder stitch. So this is what I'm doing here, trying to get as much of it pinned together to do on my sewing machine, as much as it's comfortable for me to do. And that's what I'm trying to do here. This is after it's done, after I went through with it on my sewing machine, and then I just have a little bit left to hand stitch close. I will be using my ladder stitch for this. I do have a tutorial showing you how to do ladder stitch. This is after it's all done. I do have a piece here that doesn't look right, but at this point, it was what it was. This is after everything is done. My intention for my hem didn't end up working out the way I wanted it to be, but I just let it be. My intention was to have like a folded lining, just like you would see in a suit, but with all my mistakes, I decided I'll just let the project be whatever it wants to be at this point, because it just wanted to roll me. So I just decided, you know what, have your way. But this is everything done, completed. I added a hook and eye for closure at the top. This is my full project completed. This is my lining, what it looks like inside. Overall, I feel like this project really tried me. It wasn't that it was difficult, but I just don't know what was going on. But my mind felt like I didn't even know what I was doing when it came to sewing. It was just so strange. A lot of strange things were happening. That's just weird. But anyways, for the footage, I even lost footage. My audio is different. My footage for the front, me wearing it on, I don't have it to upload it for you. But I wanted to show you my mistakes. With the top, you can see the wrinkle at the top of the front, and also my zipper, you can see what it looks like. That's a problem. It's not supposed to look like this. So I did have to go ahead and fix it, make it look like this. But I will also show you what it's supposed to look like if it's done well. I had to also fix my zipper, so stay tuned till the next video and I will show you how I did that. I'll see you in the next video. Bye.